This boat here was originally designed as a racing boat, and it had a single rudder that came down through the bottom of the boat. Very simple setup, just with a tiller on the top. The only problem with it was that it was a very heavy rudder to steer with. Since we're going more for a cruising sort of boat, I realised that the autopilot wouldn't like to drive it because of the weight on the rudder. It'd just take too much energy, and also for Jennifer to steer it under sail was hard work, and seeing that most of the time it'll be just her and me, that could become an issue over time. So what I decided to do was we would go to a twin rudder system. Because the boat's so wide, we could put a rudder system on it that we could put these rudders on an angle so that as it heeled they'd be directly down into the water rather than on an angle. The only issue with this was that to do that, I wanted to have them transom hung so they didn't interfere with our quarter berths on both sides. And we have this locker up here. Most systems, well all of them, that are available on the market, they have a rod that comes down the side here and into a gearbox here that controls the two rudders. Or you can have a push-pull cables with rods going through the hull into the back here. But what I've got here is I've got a great locker that we use to put our inflatable kayak in. So the issue with this was that we couldn't work out a steering system by buying one off the shelf that we could retain this locker. We'd end up losing it. So what we decided to do was build a steering system where we used a push-pull cable to steer these rudders. Do you want to give them a little bit of a wiggle, Pete, and show us? The problem with the cable was that we had to be able to get the cable from inside the boat to outside the boat without having a point where water would easily get into the boat. So as this rudder pulls to this side here, it needs to be on a sharper angle than that one, because there's two, one has to turn on a tighter radius than the other one. So that became an issue of how we were going to sort that out. So what we decided to do is we'd build a pendulum that was on the inside and the outside of the boat, and using that, and by making this angle here, that would give us the adjustment on the angle as the boat turned. We've made this arm, and it's on a shaft that goes to an identical arm that's inside the boat. And this is a sealed bearing and self-aligning bearing that's stainless steel, but it's also a waterproof bearing, so the water won't go past this bearing. So essentially that means that we can have the working mechanism inside the boat, and our push-pull cable attaches here somewhere down here. This is the brackets. We'll paint them so they're grey and you won't see them, and that's the bracket that holds the cable in place. And so as Peter pulls it towards him, the rudders move to there. As Peter pushes back the other way, it goes the other way. You see, and at full lock, these are 45 degrees, so we're getting about between about 37 degrees to 40 degrees rotation on the rudders, which is ample. Normally when you're steering, you know, your rudder movement would be like this. That's all the rudder movement you'd be getting. If that seems a fair bit, doesn't it? I have never really seen a push-pull cable system on a sailing boat. I've seen plenty of them with pulleys and with rods that drive different things. With this setup, the reason we didn't want those was because to route the cable and the steering around this locker here, and there's a gas bottle locker here, would have been pulleys all over the place if we wanted to use cables, and then the rods would have done the same. We would have had to have pivots everywhere, or we would have had to run it straight across underneath and split this locker in half. The push-pull cable idea is something that they use on outboard motors, and we had the cable custom made in Sydney, and they're the only people in Australia that can make one for us. and then the fittings were supplied by the local marine control people up here on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're sailing, this is all you'd be doing is this.
Yeah.
That's about as much motion as you'd have, wouldn't it?